She said, yes, but I only boycott your name. That's it. Meaning I still give you your rights. Even when I'm angry at you, I still give you your rights. The only thing I boycott about you is your name. I don't even want to mention your name. You know, sometimes the sisters get me, please don't even bring that man's name up right now. You know, they get like that. But Aisha radiallahu, look at the adab, look at the justice, the fairness of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala. And wallahi, at this time, Aisha was no more than 18 years old. And you have sisters 40, 50, 60 years old, married to the brother. You get into an argument, you don't want to cook for him, you don't want to have sexual relations with him, he can't sleep next to you, all of the other childish things that go on in the households of the brothers and sisters when you get into an argument with one another. Wallahi, you childish. Here's a 16, 17, 18-year-old girl who can conduct herself in a more mature manner than many of the sisters who have been married 3, 4 times. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala was a virgin when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married her. She ain't never had an experience of being with another man before. Where did she learn this from? She was raised in the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala. وَنَاهِيكَ عَنْ غَيْرِكَ. And that's sufficient. We don't have to go any further than that. She was raised in the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala. She said, yes, but I only boycott your name. That's it. Meaning, your argument with a brother and your disagreement with your husband does not and should not cause you to go to that extent where you're not giving the brother his rights. Yes, you may have some animosity towards the brother. You may even boycott him for a couple days or whatever the case. You don't want to talk to him. However, you still give him his rights. Never does a woman, when she get angry at her husband, she deprive him of sexual relations. Never when a woman, that's what the kuffar do. In Islam, we don't do that. Don't bring that into Islam. It has no place in Islam. لَوْ كَانَ خَيْرًا لَسَبَقُونَ إِلَيْهِ. And if there was any good in that, then the Sahaba would have beaten us to it. Ifham hada. If there was any good in that, if anything that we had in Jahiliyyah was good, if it was any good in it, the Sahaba would have beaten us to it. We would have found it in Islam. You don't find that in Islam, that the woman gets so angry at her husband, she don't want to be intimate with him. As I mentioned in the last class, sister, your husband should never leave his home with having a sexual desire, deprived of fulfilling his sexual desire. Never. Because you are setting that man up for failure if you deprive him of sexual intimacy. Because you're angry. Still allow him to fulfill his desires so that the individual doesn't leave his home feeling deprived and allow the shaitan to take advantage of him. Never. But the sisters, when they get angry, they don't want to cook for you, cook your own food. You know, these are the things that happen. Wallah, it has no place in Islam. Aisha, she said, even when I'm angry at you, although I'm angry at you, I only boycott your name. I understand that maybe some sisters haven't reached that level in their deen yet, but this is the level that you should be striving for. Instead of, trying to emulate and imitate what you see going on with the women of the kuffar. Your mother in Islam, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she is the mi'yar, she is the yardstick by which you utilize to determine your womanhood in Islam. So these are the reasons, 5 reasons that we mentioned that would necessitate a woman asking for khula. فإنه في هذه الحالة يباح لها أن تطلب فراقه على عوض تبذله له تفتدي به نفسها. In this case, in these 5 instances, one of these 5 instances, then it is allowed. It is allowed. Look at the term that the scholar used. This terminology is ya ikhwa wa akhawat. Brothers and sisters, the terminology is yubahu laha. As we mentioned, the ahkam fil Islam, ahkam al-khamsa. That the legislative rulings in Islam are 5. You have what is halal or wajib, which is an obligation. You have that which is mustahab, that which is recommended. You have that which is mubah, that which is allowed due to circumstance. You have that which is makruh, that which is hated, and you have that which is muharram, that which is haram. These are the 5 ahkam, what the ulama of fiqh call the ahkam al-khams. The 5 legislative rulings in Islam. And everything in Islam falls either under 1 or 5 or one of these 5 categories of or rulings. However, he said here that if these 5 issues are present, or one of these 5 issues are present, يُبَاحُ لَهَا أَن تَطْلُبْ فِرَاقَهُ, that it is allowed for the woman, allowed to use the word mubah, meaning just because these 5 things are present in a marriage does not mean that it's an obligation for you to ask for khula. It's an alternative. Just because something is allowed in Islam doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best course of action. And this is a qaida, this is a principle that we mentioned before. Just because something is allowed in Islam doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take it and practice it or do that. And I gave an example before. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that if a husband fears nushuz, fears marital discord on the part of his wife, then he should advise her. فَعِدُهُنَّ وَضْرِبُهُنَّ. And if he does, and she doesn't listen after he advises her, then he is to strike her lightly. Now, striking her lightly in Islam is an alternative. But does that mean that after you advise your wife and she still continues that you hit her? Is that what you, although it's allowed in Islam, but is it the best thing to do? La wallahi. La wallahi. The Prophet ﷺ never hit his wife. Never. Never. And he caught some of the same drama from his wives that we catch from our wives. However, the Prophet ﷺ, knowing the ayat, knowing that striking the woman or tapping the woman lightly is an alternative, he never utilized it. Why? Because it's not going to solve your problem. It may not solve your problem. So just because something is allowed in Islam, and here in America, if you hit a woman, you're going to jail. That's the bottom line. You can say, well, Islam says all that. Explain that to the judge. You're going to jail. That's the bottom line. So knowing that, it doesn't necessarily mean that because something is allowed in Islam, that is the best course of action for your situation. So Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he mentioned here that if one of these 5 issues are present in the marriage, then yubahu laha firaqaha, that it is allowed for her to seek or request a separation from him by giving him back his dowry in exchange for a release from the marriage, which is called al-khula, or as they say in Arabic, al-fida. She's being freed. She's freeing herself, like a slave frees herself or himself from his master. You can buy your freedom. In Islam, if you have a slave, the individual can buy his freedom. Like many of the Sahaba, they were slaves, they bought their freedom. Many of them, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he bought them their freedom. Bilal ibn Abi Rabah, Abu Bakr bought his freedom. And many of the other companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ridwanullahi alayhim. So this has to be understood, that it is allowed for her to seek a khula. Just because a woman has a husband who has bad character doesn't mean now, don't understand from what I'm saying, that it means now because you know that your husband has bad character, okay, that gives you an opportunity to just go ask for khula. No, the khula is an alternative. However, it's better for you to be patient. It's better for you to, endure. Perhaps being patient with the bad character or bad behavior of your husband, perhaps there's some reward in that for you. Asiya, when she accepted, she believed in Tawheed, she didn't ask Fir'aun for a khula. She stayed. She was tortured. She was patient. So much so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used her as an example for those who believe. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا امْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ. And Allah puts forth an example for those who believe, the wife of Fir'aun. She didn't ask for a divorce or be separated. She was patient. And all of the other examples, however, the khula is an alternative. This is my point. Doesn't mean, an alternative means that there's something else as a means for you to get out of the situation. Doesn't mean that it is an obligation on you to ask for khula. And this is based upon the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِي مَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, ayah 229, The ayat that we covered last week, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if both spouses fear that they will not be able